A dance of starlight and science. The crystalline spires of New Geneva Station sparkled like diamonds against the backdrop of endless space, their surfaces reflecting the light of distant stars. Dr. Naomi Harrison adjusted her lab coat and tried to calm her racing heart as she prepared for the most important presentation of her career. The observation deck's windows offered a breathtaking view of the Andromeda Galaxy, but her attention was fixed on the datapad in her trembling hands. At 32, Naomi had already revolutionized the field of xenobiology with her groundbreaking research on cross-species cellular regeneration. Today, she would present her findings to the Intergalactic Scientific Council, including representatives from the mysterious Stellar Dominion, a highly advanced civilization that rarely interfered with human affairs. The chamber doors slid open with a soft hiss, and Naomi's breath caught in her throat. Leading the delegation was Princess Zara'veth of the Stellar Dominion, her reputation preceding her like a comet's tail. Unlike the typical silver-skinned appearance of her people, Zara'veth's epidermis had a subtle purple undertone that seemed to shimmer with its own internal light. Her eyes, deep violet with flecks of starlight, surveyed the room with quiet intelligence. "Dr. Harrison," the princess spoke, her voice carrying a melodic quality that seemed to dance through the air. "Your research has captured our attention. Please proceed." Naomi squared her shoulders and activated the holographic display. As she began her presentation on cellular compatibility between species, she noticed something unusual. Princess Zara'veth wasn't just being politely attentive. She was genuinely engaged, leaning forward slightly, her luminescent eyes tracking every data point with intense focus. "Your hypothesis about adaptive cellular resonance," Zara'veth interrupted halfway through. "It's remarkably similar to our own studies of biological harmony. Have you considered the implications for genetic synthesis?" The question caught Naomi off guard. The Stellar Dominion was notoriously protective of their biological research. This level of engagement was unprecedented. "I have, Your Highness, but without access to advanced genetic mapping technology. It's merely theoretical." A slight smile played across Zara'veth's iridescent lips. "Perhaps we could arrange something more collaborative." The other council members stirred uneasily. Collaboration between humans and the Stellar Dominion was rare, especially in matters of biological science. But Naomi saw an opportunity she couldn't pass up. Over the next few weeks, Naomi and Zara'veth worked closely in a specialized laboratory provided by the Dominion. The princess proved to be brilliant, her understanding of genetic science far surpassing Earth's current knowledge. But it was more than her intelligence that drew Naomi in, it was her passion, her willingness to challenge her own society's rigid traditions in pursuit of scientific truth. "Your people have such remarkable adaptability," Zara'veth remarked one evening as they examined cellular samples. "It's fascinating how quickly you embrace change." Naomi looked up from her microscope, catching the princess studying her with an intensity that made her heart skip. "We've had to adapt to survive. Humanity's strength lies in our ability to learn and grow." "And to connect," Zara'veth added softly, her hand brushing against Naomi's as she reached for a sample slide. The touch sent an electric current through Naomi's arm, and she noticed the princess's skin glowing slightly brighter at the point of contact. Their research progressed rapidly, yielding unprecedented results in cross-species cellular compatibility. But with each breakthrough came increased scrutiny from both their societies. Naomi caught whispers in the station's corridors, concerns about humans gaining access to Dominion biological secrets, fears about the implications of their research. One evening, as they worked late in the lab, Zara'veth suddenly spoke in a hushed tone. "My people fear change, Naomi. They see our work as a threat to our genetic purity." She paused, her bioluminescence pulsing with emotion. "But they don't understand what I've discovered here, not just about science, but about connection. About—" She trailed off, her eyes meeting Naomi's with an intensity that made the air feel charged. "About what?" Naomi whispered, her heart pounding. Before Zara'veth could answer, an alarm blared through the station. Unauthorized access detected in Sector 7, the AI announced. Security protocols engaged. The princess's expression hardened. Someone's trying to access our research data. We need to secure it now. As they rushed to protect their work, Naomi couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the precipice of something much bigger than scientific discovery. The way Zara'veth looked at her, the electricity in their every interaction, it suggested possibilities that defied both their society's expectations. What neither of them realized was that their greatest discovery wasn't in the petri dishes or data streams, but in the space between their two species, where something unprecedented was about to bloom. Secrets in the Crystal Gardens. The attempt to breach their research data marked a turning point. In the days that followed, security around the laboratory tightened, but so did the bond between Naomi and Zara'veth. Their work hours grew longer, their conversations deeper, and the space between them charged with unspoken possibilities. One evening, after another marathon research session, Zara'veth surprised Naomi with an invitation. "There's something I want to show you," the princess said, her bioluminescence pulsing with subtle excitement. Something few humans have ever seen. They took a private shuttle to a secluded section of the station, where the Stellar Dominion maintained their private quarters. As they passed through security checkpoints, Naomi noticed the guards' uncertain glances. A human in this sector was unprecedented. The Crystal Gardens took Naomi's breath away. Vast chambers filled with crystalline formations that seemed to grow like organic things, their surfaces refracting light in impossible patterns. But these weren't mere decorative structures. They were living archives, each crystal containing centuries of Dominion biological data. "Our entire genetic history is stored here," Zara'veth explained, leading Naomi deeper into the garden. "Every adaptation, every evolutionary step, every..." She paused, her hand brushing against a crystal that immediately began to glow in response to her touch. "Every possibility." As they walked, Zara'veth shared stories of her people's past, of their journey from a dying star system to their current status as one of the most advanced species in known space. But there was something else in her voice, a hint of rebellion against the rigid traditions that had preserved their species but also limited their growth. "Our obsession with genetic purity has become our prison," she confessed, stopping before a particularly large crystal formation. "We're so afraid of change that we've forgotten how to evolve." Naomi watched as Zara'veth's bioluminescence dimmed slightly, reflecting her melancholy. Without thinking, she reached out and took the princess's hand. The contact sent a visible wave of light coursing through Zara'veth's skin, and the nearby crystals pulsed in response. "That's unusual," Zara'veth whispered, staring at their joined hands. "The crystals have never reacted to a non-Dominion before." They spent hours in the garden, running impromptu experiments that revealed something extraordinary. Naomi's presence seemed to catalyze new patterns in the crystal matrices, creating data structures that shouldn't have been possible. But it was more than just scientific curiosity driving their investigation. Every touch, every shared glance, carried an intensity that neither of them could deny. "There's something happening between us," Naomi finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Something that goes beyond our research." Zara'veth's response was to pull Naomi closer, her free hand tracing the contours of the human's face. "Our cellular compatibility studies, they weren't just showing scientific potential. They were showing something more personal." Her skin glowed brighter. "We're compatible, Naomi, in ways that should be impossible." The revelation should have been shocking, but somehow it felt inevitable. The strange reactions in their experiments, the unusual readings in their cellular studies, it all pointed to something unprecedented in the history of both their species. Their first kiss sent ripples of light through the entire garden, the crystals responding to their connection with a display that would have been impossible to explain with current scientific understanding. But in that moment, science was the furthest thing from their minds. The joy of discovery, however, was short-lived. A sharp alarm cut through the peaceful atmosphere of the garden, followed by the heavy footsteps of approaching guards. Zara'veth quickly led Naomi to a hidden alcove as voices echoed through the crystal chambers. "The council demands your presence, Your Highness," a stern voice announced. "There are concerns about your research project with the human." Zara'veth's expression hardened. "Tell the council I will attend them when I'm ready." "The council insists, Your Highness. They have evidence of unauthorized genetic experiments." In the shadows of their hiding place, Naomi felt Zara'veth's hand tighten around hers. They both knew their discovery would face opposition, but the speed and intensity of the response suggested something more. Someone had been watching them, waiting for an excuse to intervene. "Go," Zara'veth whispered to Naomi. "Use the service corridor behind the third crystal cluster. I'll handle the council." "But trust me," the princess insisted, her eyes glowing with determination. "What we've discovered here changes everything. They can't stop it now, even if they want to." As Naomi made her way back to her quarters, her mind raced with implications. Their research had already proven that humans and the Dominion were more compatible than anyone had imagined. But now, with their personal discovery, they had stumbled upon something that threatened to upend both their societies' understanding of species boundaries. And deep within her, at a cellular level, she was only beginning to understand. Something was already changing. Whispers of the heart. The days following the incident in the Crystal Gardens were tense with unspoken dangers. Naomi found herself under constant surveillance, though her observers tried to be discreet. Every time she entered her laboratory, something felt slightly out of place. A drawer not quite closed, files accessed at odd hours, surveillance cameras that seemed to track her movements more closely than before. Despite the council's scrutiny, Zara'veth found ways to maintain their connection. Messages arrived through encrypted channels, carried by trusted servants who vanished as quickly as they appeared. Each note bore the same underlying message: trust in what we've discovered. Some things are bigger than politics. Their research continued, though now they worked separately, sharing data through carefully masked channels. But something was different. Naomi noticed it first in her cellular samples, subtle changes in their behavior, patterns that shouldn't have been possible. When she finally managed to meet Zara'veth in secret, hidden away in an abandoned maintenance sector, the princess confirmed her suspicions. "The council wasn't just concerned about our research," Zara'veth explained, her bioluminescence dimmed to avoid detection. "They've been monitoring my biological readings. They know something unprecedented is happening." Naomi's heart raced. "The cellular changes are more than just experimental results," Zara'veth finished, taking Naomi's hand and placing it against her abdomen. "Feel." Under her palm, Naomi felt a subtle pulse of energy, different from Zara'veth's usual bioluminescent rhythm. Her scientific mind raced to process the implications, but her heart already knew the truth. "How is this possible?" she whispered, though her research had already shown her the answer. Their work on cross-species cellular compatibility, the unusual readings from the Crystal Gardens, the unique resonance between their genetic structures, it had all been leading to this moment. "Our bodies found a way," Zara'veth said softly. "Something that thousands of years of Dominion genetic engineering couldn't predict or prevent. Life found a way to bridge the gap between our species." The reality of their situation crashed over them like a wave. This wasn't just about groundbreaking research anymore. They had created something that would challenge the fundamental beliefs of both their societies. "The council will never accept this," Naomi said, her protective instincts flaring. "And Earth might not be any more understanding." Zara'veth's expression hardened with determination. "Then we'll have to make them understand. This child represents something greater than either of our species' prejudices. It's proof that life doesn't care about our artificial boundaries." Their quiet moment was interrupted by a distant sound, footsteps echoing through the maintenance corridors. Someone was coming. "We need to move," Zara'veth whispered, but as she stood, she swayed slightly. The pregnancy was taking a toll on her body. forcing it to adapt in ways no Dominion physiology had ever experienced. Naomi supported her, guiding them through the shadows toward an emergency exit she'd scouted earlier. "We need a plan. Somewhere safe where we can understand what's happening and protect you both. There's a research outpost in the outer rings," Zara'veth said as they moved. "It's officially abandoned, but I have allies there. Scientists who believe in pushing boundaries rather than enforcing them." They reached the exit, but before they could slip through, Zara'veth grabbed Naomi's arm. "There's something else you need to know. The changes, they're not just affecting me. Your cellular structure is showing similar adaptations. Whatever this is, it's changing both of us." The implications stunned Naomi. Their love hadn't just created new life. It was reshaping them at a fundamental level, proving that the boundaries between species were more fluid than anyone had imagined. A sharp alarm cut through their conversation. Someone had detected their unauthorized presence in the maintenance sector. They had minutes, maybe seconds, before security forces arrived. "Tomorrow," Zara'veth said quickly. "The emergency shuttle bay in Section 7. I'll have everything arranged." She pressed a small crystal into Naomi's hand. "This contains all our research data and my personal genetic archive. Keep it safe. If anything happens to me—" "Nothing is going to happen to you," Naomi interrupted fiercely. "To either of you." Their goodbye was brief but intense, each knowing that the next day would change everything. As Naomi made her way back to her quarters through the winding service corridors, she clutched the crystal close. Inside it was more than just data. It was proof of something revolutionary. Love, it seemed, was more powerful than any genetic programming. That night, as she prepared for what was to come, Naomi reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her to this point. She had come to New Geneva Station to push the boundaries of science, but instead, she had helped prove that the greatest discoveries often happen in the heart. In her secured lab, she ran one final analysis on her own cellular structure. The results confirmed what Zara'veth had said. She was changing too. Their connection had triggered something unprecedented in human physiology, as if their bodies were trying to meet halfway across the vast gulf between their species. Tomorrow would bring challenges none of them could predict. But as she watched her cells dance under the microscope, showing patterns that blended human and Dominion characteristics, Naomi felt a fierce joy. They had discovered something beautiful and profound. Proof that love could transcend not just cultural boundaries, but biological ones as well. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. What she and Zara'veth had created would change both their worlds forever. The question was whether those worlds were ready for such a profound transformation. Storm of stars. Dawn never truly came on New Geneva Station, but the artificial day cycle was just beginning when everything fell apart. Naomi's communication system erupted with urgent messages. Her lab had been sealed by station security, her research credentials suspended, and her movements restricted to her quarters. Through her window, she watched as Dominion ships arrived in unprecedented numbers, their crystalline hulls catching starlight like faceted jewels. This wasn't just about her and Zara'veth anymore. This was becoming an interstellar incident. Her secure channel pinged with an encrypted message. "Plans changed. Come now. Docking Bay 13. The signature was from Zara'veth, but something felt off about the phrasing. Still, she couldn't risk missing their rendezvous if it was genuine. Using maintenance access codes she'd memorized for just such an emergency, Naomi slipped through the station's service corridors. Her heart pounded with each security checkpoint she bypassed, knowing that discovery now would mean more than just professional disgrace. She reached Docking Bay 13 to find it eerily quiet. No sign of Zara'veth, no shuttle, just empty space and humming machinery. Then she heard footsteps behind her, too heavy to be the princess. "Dr. Harrison," a deep voice announced. "The Dominion Council requests your immediate presence." She turned to face a group of Dominion guards, their crystalline armor pulsing with warning lights. At their center stood Council Elder Vexthor, his ancient face set in lines of disapproval. "Where is Zara'veth?" Naomi demanded, though she already suspected the answer. "The princess is receiving necessary medical attention," Vexthor stated coldly. "What you two have created, it's an abomination, a threat to the genetic purity we have maintained for millennia." "It's the next step in evolution," Naomi countered, her hand instinctively moving to her pocket, where Zara'veth's crystal still rested. "You can't stop progress by clinging to the past." "Progress?" Vexthor's bioluminescence flared with anger. "You've corrupted our future queen, infected her with human genetic material. The child she carries could destroy everything we've built." A new voice cut through the tension. "The child I carried is the future you're too afraid to imagine." Zara'veth stood in the docking bay entrance, her personal guard unit flanking her. Her pregnancy was more visible now, her abdomen glowing with a unique pattern that combined human and Dominion genetic signatures. "Stand down, daughter," Vexthor ordered. "Think of your duty to our people." "I am thinking of our people," Zara'veth replied, moving to stand beside Naomi. "We're stagnating, Father. Our obsession with genetic purity has become a chain rather than a shield. This child proves there's another way." The standoff was interrupted by a new arrival. A delegation of human officials led by Admiral Chen of the Earth Alliance. "This situation has become a matter of human security," he announced. "Dr. Harrison, you've violated dozens of protocols regarding genetic experimentation." Naomi felt the walls closing in, but Zara'veth's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining. The touch sent visible waves of energy through both their bodies, proof of how deeply their connection had altered them. "Look," Naomi addressed both groups. "What's happening here is bigger than politics or protocols. Our research showed that humans and the Dominion share more genetic markers than anyone realized. This pregnancy isn't an accident. It's proof that our species are meant to evolve together." To demonstrate, she pulled out the crystal Zara'veth had given her. The data projected into the air showed the beautiful complexity of their merged genetic structures, the impossible made possible through love rather than laboratory manipulation. "The child carries markers of both species," Zara'veth explained, her voice carrying the authority of her royal lineage. "But it's not a simple mixture. It's something entirely new. A bridge between our peoples that could lead to advances we've only dreamed of." The tension in the room shifted as the implications sank in. Admiral Chen stepped forward, his expression thoughtful. "The diplomatic implications alone would be catastrophic if handled poorly," Vexthor interrupted. "But perhaps there's another way to approach this situation." A flutter of movement from Zara'veth drew everyone's attention. She swayed slightly, her bioluminescence flickering. "The child," she gasped. "It's time." The next few moments were chaos as both human and Dominion medical teams rushed forward. But it was Naomi who caught Zara'veth as she stumbled, their bodies resonating with shared energy. "Whatever happens," Zara'veth whispered, her hand pressing against her glowing abdomen, "our love has already changed the universe. They can't undo that." As medical teams argued over jurisdiction and politicians debated protocols, Naomi held her love close, feeling the impossible life they'd created moving beneath her hands. Their future was uncertain, but they had already proven that the boundaries between species were meant to be bridged, not enforced. The storm of politics raged around them, but in that moment, nothing mattered except the miracle they had created together. A child born of love that transcended the very stars themselves. Legacy of love. The medical bay of New Geneva Station had never seen anything like this. 2 medical teams, 1 human, 1 Dominion, worked in unprecedented harmony as Zara'veth's labor progressed. The princess's bioluminescence pulsed in waves that matched her contractions, filling the room with dancing light. Naomi never left her side, their hands clasped together, sharing strength. Every touch between them created visible ripples of energy that fascinated both medical teams, but there was no time for scientific observation now. The child was coming, and no one knew exactly what to expect. "The genetic readings are off the charts," the human doctor murmured, staring at her instruments. The baby's DNA is reorganizing itself with each contraction. The Dominion healer nodded, his crystalline medical sensors pulsing rapidly. The child is creating its own unique genetic structure, taking the best from both species. This is unprecedented. Vexthor paced outside the medical bay, his ancient face creased with worry. The admiral stood nearby, both leaders forced into an uneasy alliance by circumstances beyond their control. Through the observation window, they watched as history unfolded before them. Push, Naomi in courage, her own body resonating with Zara'veth's pain. Their connection had grown so deep that she could feel echoes of the contractions, their shared biology creating a bond that defied scientific explanation. With a final surge of energy that sent waves of light cascading through the medical bay, Zara'veth gave birth. The cry that filled the room was neither human nor Dominion, but something beautifully, perfectly in between. "She's beautiful," Naomi whispered, tears streaming down her face as she gazed at their daughter. The child's skin had a subtle iridescence, like moonlight on water, and her eyes held the same starlight glow as Zara'veth's. But there was unmistakably human warmth in her smile, and her tiny hands reached out with very human curiosity. "She's perfect," Zara'veth agreed, her voice weak but filled with joy. "Look how she glows. It's different from our bioluminescence. It's as if she's created her own way of shining." The medical teams were beside themselves with excitement. The child's readings showed characteristics that should have been impossible. Human adaptability combined with Dominion energy manipulation, all wrapped in a completely stable genetic structure that was entirely her own. "She's not just surviving," the human doctor announced, reviewing the data. "She's thriving. Her hybrid genetics aren't just viable. They're superior in many ways to either parent species."